Hello everyone, welcome back to the shop. This is the second video of turning this garage into a workshop series. In the last video, I installed a new 220 and 110 outlets all around the shop. I insulated the walls and I installed OSB sheetings. If you haven't seen that video yet, I will leave the link down in the description and up here in the corner. For the next step, I'm going to start building a miter saw station. This won't be just a place for the miter saw, it would also include plenty of drawers and cabinets to help me organize the shop and keep everything within the reach. Here are all the sheets I'll be using for this build. I've got 4 sheets of 1/4 inch, 1 sheet of 1/2 inch, and 11 sheets of 3/4 inch plywood. Originally, I planned to set this up outside so I could break down the sheets before bringing them inside to finish cutting them to size on the table saw. But winter showed up early this year, and with temperature dropping down to single digit, working outside just wasn't an option. Luckily, I installed a new electric heater last week, and it works great. It keeps the garage warm and comfortable to work in. So I pushed everything that I'm not going to use for this build against that wall, so I have enough room to break down the sheets with a track saw and then finish cutting them to size on the table saw. I've already designed everything in SketchUp and I have the full cut list ready. I'm currently working on the build plans, so hopefully by the time this video goes live, those will be finished as well. If they are, I will leave the link in the description in case you would like to pick up a copy for yourself. All right, without further ado, let's start this build.
As I mentioned earlier, because the space here is limited, I'm using my track saw to break down the large sheets into smaller pieces first. But honestly, even if you have enough space to run a full sheet of plywood through a table saw, I still think it's better to break it down with the track saw first. It's simply a safer and more manageable approach. I am fortunate enough to have a track saw in my shop, but if you don't have one, you can still do the same thing with a regular circular saw on a straight edge. It works just as well for breaking down large sheets into more manageable pieces. After that, I bring the pieces over to the table saw and cut them down to their final sizes. And as I go, I make sure to label each piece so I don't get confused later when it's time for assembly. Next, I need to cut grooves in the drawer sides and the drawer fronts so the drawer bottoms can slide into place. To set the blade height precisely, I'm using these spacer blocks to raise the blade to exactly 3/8 of an inch. The groove itself needs to be 1/2 inch from the edge of each board, so once the blade height is set, I can position the fence and start cutting. Normally, I would use a dado stack for this kind of job, but to be honest, I was a little too lazy to swap blades, so I just did it with a regular blade. The blade curve is 1/8 of an inch, and I want the groove to be just slightly under 1/4 inch wide. So I run each board through once, then move the fence slightly and make a second pass to widen the groove. Sneaking up on the cut gives me a nice snug fit for the drawer bottoms.
All right, I've cut, marked, and sorted all of the parts needed for the base cabinets. Here we are, we have the bigger panels like the side panels, bottom panels, back panels, and these are the drawer bottoms. And these parts are mostly the parts for the drawers. And so 3 base cabinets will have a total of 15 drawers altogether. And the next step is to start by building the cabinet carcasses and then move on to making the drawers, assembling everything, and finally installing the base cabinets. And once that's done, I can set the miter saw and then shift my focus to the upper cabinets.
For the joinery, I'm using pocket holes and pocket hole screws. It's a method that's fast, easy, and plenty strong for this type of project. Using the correct pocket hole system, I can quickly drill pocket holes into all of my pieces. I make sure not to miss any cabinet panels or drawer parts so everything is ready when it's time for assembly. Speaking of assembly, these pocket hole clamps are really handy. They basically act like an extra set of hands while you're assembling parts and driving the pocket hole screws. So first I assemble all of the cabinet carcasses and then I move on to the drawers. In total, I built 3 identical base cabinets with 18 drawers which are all in different sizes. Once the drawer boxes are assembled, I slide the drawer bottoms into the grooves that I cut earlier. After that, I secure the bottoms with a few pin nails through the back of the drawer. This is a system I've been using for building drawers for many years and it has never failed me. Here I'm building a base or a platform for the cabinets. The reason for that is my shop floor isn't level at all, so it's much easier to level this platform first and then set the cabinets on top of it, rather than trying to level the cabinets themselves. Working with large cabinets and trying to level them individually would be much more difficult, so this approach makes the whole process a lot simpler.
Alright, the base cabinet carcasses and all of the drawers are fully assembled. As you can see, I have very limited space to work, but somehow I managed to clear this wall so I can install the cabinets here. So my shop floor is far from level. It actually has a slope this way. You can do this using like long levels, make sure that in each direction is level, but that would be it's definitely a lot more work and less precise. Instead, I'm going to use a laser level. I set it up here and that way I can make sure the entire platform is dead level across both sections. Once that's done, I can simply set the cabinets on top, install the drawers, and the base cabinets will be finished.
Using shims of different sizes here and there, I level both sections of the platform at the same time. Once everything is level, I screw the platform into the baseboard of the garage wall. The only reason for doing that is to prevent any shifting while I'm installing the cabinets on top of it.
Okay, after wrestling with this thing for like half an hour, I finally got a level using that laser, and I shimmed it in different places, so now it's level in both directions. We can confirm it with this long level, if I can set it, yeah. So There you go. That was the front. Now, and here's the back. Level, and let's test front to back. Okay, we all good here.
All right, from this point until the end of the video, except for the parts where I'm talking, my camera somehow didn't record the audio. I'm not sure what happened, and unfortunately I only realized it after the project was already finished. So my apologies for that. You'll have to listen to my voice for the rest of the video. Okay, how about this? Whenever I'm not talking, I'll play some background music instead. Alright, back to the build. After placing the cabinets on top of the base, I screw the cabinets together first. Once they are secured to each other, I attach the cabinets to the base with a few screws.
Alright, now it's time to install the drawer slides. It is not rocket science, but it can get a little tricky if you're not careful. But since I've already have the design and I know the exact width of each drawer slides, which is 1 3/4 here, I can precisely figure out where each slides needs to go inside the cabinet. Based on that, I cut these blocks from a scrap piece of plywood, and these going to act as spacers between each slide. So here how it works. Imagine this is the bottom of the cabinet. Based on the design, the lowest drawer slide needs to sit 3 5/8 inch up from the bottom. So I have a spacers which is exactly 3 5/8. That sits at the bottom of the cabinet like this, and here goes the first or the lowest drawer slide. Now I know, again based on the design, that the distance between the lowest or the first slide and the second is 5 3/4. So I have a 5 3/4 spacer that goes on top of the lowest slide, and then sits the second slide. And the space between the second and third is 3 3/4, like this. Goes the third, and between the third and fourth is 2 1/4, like this, and it goes all the way up to the last slide. Now I will show you the actual installation in just a moment, but this is the basic process I use every time to install drawer slides, and it has never failed me.
As I mentioned, once you know the exact position of the drawer slides and the spacing between them, installation becomes very straightforward. It's basically a spacer, then the first drawer slide, another spacer, the second slide, and you just keep repeating that process until all of them are installed. And before moving on to installing the drawers, I install the cabinet tops and secure them with screws from both the top and the bottom.
Alright, for installing the drawers, I'm using the same principle as when I install the drawer slides. So based on the design, I know that the gap between each drawer is 1/2 inch, and the space between the bottom of the cabinet and the lowest drawer is also 1/2 inch. So I cut these 2 1/2 inch spacer blocks and I place one at each end of the cabinet bottom, touching the cabinet sides. Then I set the drawer like this on top of these spacers. That guarantees that the lowest drawer is exactly 1/2 inch above the drawer floor or drawer bottom. Next, I slowly pull out the drawer. That usually brings the sliding portion of the drawer slides out with it. If it doesn't, I'll just use a flathead screwdriver to pull that part out manually, and like this. And then I'll make sure that the front of the sliding portion is perfectly flush with the front of the drawer. For that, you can use a block to make sure that the front of the drawer slides is flush with the front of the drawer. And then you can find the first hole. Then I'll drive the first screw into the front hole and snug it down. Okay, then I repeat the same step on the other side. Then after that, making sure that those first two holes are have screws and the snug, I can pull out the drawer a little bit more, revealing the second screw hole. Then I will secure it to the drawer. Once the drawer is fully screwed in, I'll do a quick test to make sure that it slides smoothly and runs freely. Then I'll repeat the exact same process for each drawer until they're all installed.
After installing all the drawers for the base cabinets, I'm done with the base section for now, and I move on to building the upper cabinets. For the upper cabinets, it's basically rinse and repeat. I start by breaking down the large sheets with the track saw. Then I bring the pieces over to the table saw to cut them to their final sizes. After that, I cut the grooves for the drawer bottoms, drill the pocket holes, and get everything ready for assembling the cabinet carcasses and the drawers. And I use the same technique that I showed earlier for assembling the drawers. Building the upper cabinets is a little different from the base cabinets. The top section of the upper cabinets will have cabinet doors and adjustable shelves. So before assembling the carcasses, I drill the holes for the shelf pins. It's much easier to do it while the cabinets are not assembled and you have better access. I take a few measurements to figure out exactly where the holes needs to go, and then using the correct shelf pin jig, I drill the shelf pin holes before moving on to assembling the cabinets. Then I drill all the pocket holes needed for assembling the upper cabinets. The assembly process is basically the same as the base cabinets. The main difference is that the upper cabinets have two sections. The lower section contains 3 drawers, and the top section has a cabinet door and an adjustable shelf. Because of that, I need to install a divider that separates these two sections. To position this divider correctly, I use these spacer blocks to mark exactly where the divider needs to go. Once everything is aligned, I secure it in place with pocket hole screws. After that, I finish assembling the upper cabinets by attaching the back panel. For attaching the cabinet doors, or more specifically the hinges, I use this scrap piece of plywood. It's the same length as the cabinet doors, but much narrower, which make it easier to work with. Using the Crick cabinet hinge jig, I drill all the holes needed for the hinges on this scrap board. Then I temporarily install the hinges on it instead of the actual door. And then I go ahead and drill the holes for the hinges on all doors. Because this board is lighter and easier to handle than the full cabinet door, I can use it to position the other parts of the hinge on the cabinet body. Once I'm sure everything lines up and works properly, I remove the hinges from the scrap board and attach them to the actual cabinet door. After that, attaching the cabinet doors onto the cabinet body is quick and straightforward. Next, I need to figure out where to place the shelf so that when the miter saw sits on it, the saw's base is perfectly level with the cabinet tops. To do that, I measure the height of the miter saw base plus the thickness of the plywood. Then I use the same square to mark that measurement and draw a reference line on the cabinet walls. After that, I position the shelf support along that line and tag them in place with some pin nails. Once everything is aligned, I secure the supports with several screws to make sure they're nice and solid. And then I simply place the shelf on the supports. Now it's time to move the upper cabinet carcasses into place. Once they are positioned, I use a few clamps to align the different sections with each other. Then I pre-drill some holes and drive screws through the cabinet sides to attach sections together. I also secure the upper cabinets to the back wall to make sure everything is solid and stable, but unfortunately I don't have the footage of that part. Just like I did with the base cabinets, I installed all the drawers and then attached the cabinet doors to the cabinet bodies.
Okay, we're almost done with the project. One of the last steps is to attach the drawer false front to the drawers and then install the pulls. And you have basically two ways to do that. One is somehow attach the false fronts to the drawers and then drill the holes for the pulls. But the other way is to figure out where the holes needs to be drilled. Then you can use those holes to attach the false front to the drawer, and then you can pull it out, secure it from inside, and once the false front is secured, you can unscrew those holes and use it as a guide to drill through the body of the drawer. Then you can attach the pull from inside. I will definitely explain while I'm doing it. But to be able to drill the hole perfectly in the center and the middle of each drawer false front, I made this jig. This board is exactly the length of each false front, And so I marked the center of this board and also center of each false front. The only thing that I need to do is basically align these lines from both sides, and I use the board as a sacrificial board so the hole doesn't just blow out from the other side. I only need to clamp this down and use these holes as a pilot to drill through each false front. And that is what I'm going to do for all of the false fronts. Once the holes are drilled, I can attach them to the drawers.
So I just align those two center lines, then secure everything with clamps, and after that I drill through those guide holes. This gives me the drawer false front with the holes already pre-drilled exactly at the center of the board. The gap between each drawer false front needs to be 1/8 of an inch, so I use this ruler, which is 1/8 of an inch thick, as a spacer. Then I drive screws through those holes to temporarily attach the false front. After that, I pull the drawer out and secure the false front properly from the inside of the drawer. Once it's secure, I can remove the temporary screws from the front. Next, using a sacrificial board to prevent blowout, I drill all the way through the drawer front. Then I remove the drawer and install the drawer pulls.
Alright, so I have installed all of the drawer false fronts and the drawer pulls. The last thing left to do is to install handles or the pulls for cabinet doors. And for that I made a simple jig, and this basically sits in the lower corner of each door, so every handle ends up on the exact same position. I place the jig like this, I drill through these guide holes, and when I'm done I turn it like this, move on to the next door, and repeat the process. This is a very fast, simple, and perfectly consistent process.
And it's always a good practice to use a sacrificial board at the back of the piece you're drilling through to prevent any blowouts. When I started building this miter saw station, I was planning to build my own miter saw fence system. But when I came across this fence system from Rockler, I really liked the design, and honestly I realized that what I wanted to build probably wouldn't be better than this one. So I decided to press the easy button and just go with this fence system from Rockler. I'm only installing the fence system on the left side of the miter saw. The kit came with 2 rails and each one is 36 inches long. Together they were longer than the space I have available on that side, so I had to trim one of them down to fit the space properly. These rails are made of aluminum, so they are easy to cut on the miter saw. You just need to go really slow. Then I clamped the longest straight edge I have to the fence of the miter saw to use it as a reference. Once I was happy with the alignment, I secured the miter saw in place with the screws. After that, I connected the 2 rail section together with the provided connectors, and using that same straight edge as a reference, I aligned the rails and secured them to the cabinet tops. I used the 24-inch level that I had to help me locate the 24-inch mark. The stop block does have micro adjustment, but I marked the 24-inch first so I could install the self-adhesive tape measure. Starting from that 24-inch mark, I begin sticking the tape measure to the fence, working my way out toward both sides, and I move slowly to make sure that the tape is properly aligned and firmly adhered to the fence. Once it's fully applied, I trim the ends and now it is ready for the test cut. And after the test cut, you can see it is exactly 24 inches. And finally, I insert the shelf pins and place the shelves in position to wrap up this build.
All right, with that, the construction of this miter saw station is officially done. This is something that I really wanted to build ever since I moved to this shop. It has a ton of storage and it will help me to store and organize most of my tools and stuff. In total, there are 27 drawers and 4 cabinets, and there is still some room above for storing lumber and other stuff. You might notice that the area for the saw itself, it looks a little tight, and you'd be right, because when the slide is backed up from left side it goes to 37 degrees, and from the right side it only goes to 30 degrees. And that is because based on my experience, more than 95% of my cuts are 90-degree straight cuts, and I'm planning to build a miter slit for the table saw, and for those angle cuts I'm going to use table saw. But if I ever have a project that requires a lot of miter cuts, I can simply move this saw over to this table, make my cuts, and move it back. And worst case scenario, if I ever find myself doing a lot of miter cuts, I can shift this section of this cabinet to the right, make this platform wider so I can use this saw on its full capacity. So I have left myself options. But that is a price I'm willing to pay for having more storage in a limited space. I really hope you enjoyed this build. I definitely did. I have a full build plan and detailed cut list of this build. So if you want to pick it up for yourself, I will leave the link down in the description of this video. As always, thank you all for watching, and if you'll excuse me, I've got to fill this bad boy up.